Hello and welcome to episode number 106 of the Hobbies and Happiness podcast, where we talk about the hobby that makes us happy, card games. I'm one of your host, Dan.
I'm Jim, and today we find out that there is a problem with card games.
Not just all card games, Jim.
All card games.
Specific card games that utilize a certain resource system.
No, every single card game in the world right now has a problem.
You know, actually, you're probably not far off at all. I
far.
guarantee you there's someone somewhere who would find a problem with every single card game.
Exactly.
So,
welcome to the internet.
Yeah, right. So, all right. So today we've kind of talked about this on the past couple weeks, but today we are talking about a article written by Sam Black entitled Resources and Game Design. So with the recent prominence of Disney Lorcana and the resource system, Sam does a very he does an amazing job really succinctly putting down his thoughts on why he doesn't like games that utilize cards from hand as face down resources. So we're going to dive, basically what we're going to do is we're going to read that the article in its entirety, because it's a pretty short article, and that way it'll help our audio listeners who aren't watching, so they can get through the entirety of that article, and then we'll kind of go through our points, because there's a lot in this article I agree with, and there's also a lot that I don't agree with, and Jim is probably in the same boat. So, but regardless, I think Sam does a really great job of really putting down a lot of Magic players' thoughts, and I think not just all Magic players, but I think it's really Magic players who've been around for a long time. Yeah. And that's the vibe that I've gotten from when this article was written, and like the vibe from Twitter kind of that I got. So, but before we dive into that, we need to talk about our sponsor, Amazon Audible. If you head over to our affiliate link, www.audibletrial.com/hobbies and happiness, you can sign up for your free 30-day trial of Amazon's Audible service. When you do, you get a free credit. That's right, one free credit added to your account that you can trade for an audiobook that's on the service. What's even better is if you're an Amazon Prime member, you get 2 free credits added to your account. That's right, Amazon Prime member, 2 credits for 2 free audiobooks. So you can use those credits, get whatever audiobook you want that's on the service, and they're yours forever. That's right, even if you cancel that subscription. So if you cancel before the end of that 30 days, you get to keep those credits onto your account. So again, www.audibletrial.com/hobbies and happiness. Sign up for your free 30 trial of Amazon Audible today. Okay, so I'm gonna admit, I've kind of seen articles like this over the years, but in all honesty, I think this is one of the most well-written articles that I've seen written on the topic. Okay, so we're just going to dive right in. If you're interested, we will link the article in the description, in the podcast notes, wherever you're watching or listening. That way you can access it as well. It's over on Eminence Events. So again, the title is Resources and Game Design by Sam Black. So we're just going to go right into it. So leads off with Magic's mana system is largely the inspiration for how most TCGs balance cards in most games. Cards cost variable numbers of resources, which you get from other cards. In Magic, you generally get those resources from lands that generally don't do anything other than give you resources. Mm-hmm. This means that you don't always draw the perfect number of lands, so your game doesn't always go according to plan. Many other TCGs fix this problem by allowing you to play any card, typically face down, as a resource. This minimizes player frustration in non-games where one player's deck doesn't function. Despite many games offering this solution, I'm among many players who choose to play Magic instead. I think this is supposed to be a question because it says it is just. I think it should be, is it just because I started playing Magic first, or because Magic's a larger game with better support, or is there something to Magic's land system that's good? So I think right off the bat, I think he does a really good job of setting the stage, right? He does a good job of setting the stage. Now, I got to point out though first, he does kind of recognize, because he uses the word problem, right? He said, and I think he specifically says it's, what does he say? Many other TCGs fix this problem, and the problem is your game not going according to plan, right? Yep. So and I think every player would agree that is the inherent problem.
Happens in every card game a lot of the time.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, would you agree there, Jim? Okay.
Yeah.
So, does a good job of laying out the issue at hand. Okay. And then dives into it a little bit in this next paragraph. Says, I believe that the quote problem caused by Magic's land system is a feature, and that the specific quote solution of allowing other cards to be played face down as a resource is a big red flag for me when I learn a new game. So my first question would be, why is it a big red flag? And he dives into it, okay? Says, this idea likely isn't new to you, but I want to go over the reasoning, and there I think I'm more likely to offer a perspective you haven't considered, okay? So, yeah, I mean, there's not really much there, okay? But then, and then we go into it. He says, the strengths of Magic's land system. Now, the one place I wish he would have dove into, and we can save this to the end, but he talks about strengths, but he doesn't talk about the drawbacks, like the negatives, which I think and that's where I think he's approaching it from a bias standpoint, which makes sense because I mean he's been playing Magic for a very long time.
Well, he kind of touches on it in the intro of just being like, oh, well, there's a problem of you're not playing the game, you're getting kind of like mana screwed, you're just not able to do what it is you're looking to do, and that's the problem.
Right. I just wish he would, the way he goes into the strengths here, the way he succinctly brings out the strengths. I wish he would do the same for the negatives, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, so he kind of gives us, let's see, 1, 2. He gives us about 4 points. Okay, it's really 4 main points. Okay, and so the first point he says, lands are interesting cards, which you got me. Like I agree, and I don't think there's any arguing with this.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So starts off, says there are a ton of different lands in Magic that do interesting things. If cards get played face down as lands, or if you just naturally get one extra resource every turn, those resources are all the same and have no context. The idea that you can choose which lands you want to play and get various small trade-offs makes lands a really interesting part of the game. And I'll say this goes for any game that utilizes specific resource cards. Yeah. So I think he's 100% on point, and it's not unique to lands. It's just Magic did it first. Yeah. And so really, you lose that if you don't have resource-specific cards. Yeah. Okay. Outside of the design possibilities and strategic considerations around lands, I think the aesthetic advantage can't be overlooked. 100% agree. As much as we can just think of cards as game pieces, it's clear that the art and look of the cards matter. And when half of your cards are just face-down sleeves or the backs of cards, the game just doesn't look as good. What do you think?
Honestly, I've been saying this problem with Lorcana since I noticed it. Same. And I was like, oh, everyone just has plain sleeves and their back row looks terrible. And I was even telling people, I'm like, make sure you get artwork sleeves and then a covering over it. Yep. Just so you can have something to look at.
When I first heard about the resource system in Lorcana, months ago, right? That was where my mind first went to, is, oh, crud. And again, like, it is what it is, right? Yeah. And I'll tell you, when I first got into Magic, okay, I specifically bought boxes of the set Unstable. Yeah. Why? Do you know why, Jim?
Why? Lands?
Because of the lands. Because I think that was one of the first.
I think that was the main reason everyone bought it.
Yep. Yeah. I think that was one of the first bigger sets that had full art, like no border. There was like full art lands with no border around it, I believe.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. Because I think the previous onset did have kind of full art lands, but it still had border around it.
Slight border, yeah.
Slight border, yeah. So and that was, again, the main reason, well, the only reason I bought that set, because again, that set is not standard legal, not anything legal. Yeah. But my goodness, those lands were nice.
Are gorgeous.
And they were worth a decent amount too, as far as lands go, right? Yeah. And so I wanted all my decks to have the unstable lands. Mm-hmm. So, and I still have a ton of them. So, I mean, I can't disagree. There's nothing here that I can disagree with, right? And then his last paragraph here says, aside from that, while it can be nice to remove the mental burden of processing the details of your or your opponent's resources, removing all context or unique quality from those resources simplifies the game. That's not exactly a criticism, just an observation of a difference.
Yeah.
What do you think about that one? What do you think about that last paragraph there?
There have been a couple times where I'm trying to see how many resources you're at, and it kind of just all blends together. I'm like, how, does he have 6?
Yeah.
And I don't just want to ask,
right.
You know, because then he could be like, oh, well, now he's figuring out how many lands I had to now consider what he's going to be playing. And I just don't want to play those mental mind games with things. But asking how many cards in hand, that's a different question.
Well, and I think to his point as well, I think it because he says it simplifies the game. Sometimes I would even go as far as saying I think it oversimplifies the game, right? Which again, like that could be your goal. That could be what you're trying to accomplish, right? Yeah. Because again, I think you do have to ask these questions of, because again, I think this article really is coming at the standpoint of Magic and Lorcana, two very different games and game systems. Yeah. One is supposed to be, for lack of a better word, convoluted, right? And one is supposed to be extremely simple, right? Yeah. They're very different games and game systems. Okay, one is, I think, designed to be much more simpler, right? And so I think, like, if that's what you're going for as a mechanic, then you've hit the mark, right? Yeah. It just may not be what certain people are looking for, right? Yeah. But again, he says in that last sentence, says that's not exactly a criticism, it's just an observation of difference, which again, 100% agree. Okay. All right. So point number 2, choosing which and how many lands is an interesting aspect of deck building. Yes, 100% correct.
Yep.
All right, so he starts off saying different decks have different requirements in terms of how many colors they need, how many colored pips they need, and how much total mana they need, and fine-tuning the trade-offs of playing more or fewer lands and choosing how many untapped lands versus how many lands with activated abilities, etc. you want to play adds a lot of depth to deck building. Again, I'm going to interject here and saying, if you don't want to add that much depth, you simplify that resource. Like, you simplify that mechanic, right? And so again, I think doing a great job at highlighting why he, agrees or disagrees with these different systems. But again, you have a player who is a very high level player and really digs into the nitty-gritty of every single aspect of Magic. Okay. And then when a game like Lorcana comes along, it's really trying to just chop all this stuff off and just make it simpler. Okay. And I mean, they kind of succeeded, right?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
All right. So next paragraph here says, if all of your cards can be played as resources such that you always have the exact amount of resources you expect, the way you use resources will be more uniform. Yes, some decks will play more cheap cards and either try to end the game sooner or play more ways to draw more cards, and some will play more expensive cards and try to play longer games, but you lose a lot of novelty at the extremes. It's hard to find decks that have different curves or use resources in really different ways, the way that Magic decks where less than a third or more than half the deck is lands. What do you think about that paragraph there, Jim?
Okay. It's just honestly like, so when I was first reading through it, I didn't get to this point. I think I got like halfway through, or the first couple paragraphs. Okay. Of it. And just hearing the opposite end of how these other mechanics are, bad. I shouldn't say bad.
Right.
But just interesting aspects of deck building. This kind of just is weird to me of hearing it.
But again, you got like know the author, like Sam Black, again, like very much known to be high level thinker, very strategic, and wanting, it's like he wants things to be as complicated as possible.
Yeah.
And again, like I've followed Sam for a while, and he's a smart guy.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly, right?
Yeah. Which I think he also brings up in the article. I don't remember exactly of if you make every single card resource, you now have to think about which card it is you're getting rid of, and then that also adds complexity to it.
Right, which he doesn't like.
So why don't you like that part?
Well, right.
It's in the middle of the game rather than the deck building.
And we'll get there.
No, you're more problem solving than just my deck building is.
Right. Like that. This paragraph here, it's almost like he's saying he wants deck building to be as I mean, I think the best word is interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting from a deck builder's perspective. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the way he's written thus far, the vibe that I get, and I think you're getting as well, is he wants it and he likes it when it's more interesting, more complicated.
Yeah.
But then we'll get into these later points where he's like, but I also want these things to be easy. So you'll see that here.
And specifically with Lorcana, not every card can be a resource.
Right. And he does mention that.
Yeah.
Yes.
In other card games, everyone can be a resource, but specifically Lorcana.
In some games, yeah.
So it's not even like, 100% of your deck can just be used as a resource.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's, 75% of your deck is most likely going to be a resource in Lorcana. Right. So, I mean, where does this number is he looking for?
Right.
Less than 100, more than 25%.
But again, and I think again from a deck builder's perspective, if you have cards that you can only be used as resources, like you know what to expect.
Yeah.
And that from a mental standpoint, I think is huge. Okay. Yeah. And he gets into that here, right? Mostly in these next 2 points, right? And this first one is this. It's playing a land is easy.
Here it is.
Here it is. This part I think is widely overlooked. Playing a land is easy. I don't think so. I don't think it's overlooked. I think it's overlooked by some people, but I mean, like between you and me, and I know folks that we've talked to, this is not something that I've overlooked. Okay. Yeah. Choosing the order that you play your lands, if you have a lot of different lands in your deck, can occasionally be somewhat tricky, but for the most part, putting a land into play is essentially a free action with regard to your mental burden. This lets you advance the game without making any hard decisions and leave your mental energy for the part of the game where you interact with your opponent. I don't disagree with anything he said there.
No.
Do you?
No, I just think it's semi-contradicting, like we just talked about. Now it's you want this free action.
He wants
on your
this to be
burden.
easy, right?
Come on, dude! But you want to be calculating the perfect amount of lands, and just like, come on, man!
Right,
get out of my face.
So again, I agree with what he's saying. Yeah. It's just. I agree. It's like it's almost like a flip.
Yeah,
it's kind of a flip.
And I've jokingly said in the past before for Lorcana, just play bad cards that you're just going to utilize. As a
resource, right?
Which I do with the starter decks all the time. I'm like, I know exactly what cards I'm using in the back row.
Right. And that's one perspective to take as a deck builder, because again, with trading card games, there's two. I think there's two different players you think about. You think about playing as a deck builder and then playing as a pilot.
Yeah.
And those, in all honesty, two different sides of your brain.
Yeah.
If you're building, because I think a lot of I love building decks. Jim and I were just talking before we started recording this podcast. I was like, I've built so many decks just the past couple days in DC Dual Force. I've been building Lorcana decks. I've been building Alpha Clash decks. I'm excited to dive into Star Wars Unlimited. Yeah. And then in all honesty, I'm excited to show off all these decks and then just do deck techs and get all these decks out there for you guys just to check out. And then honestly, show you the bad decks that I've built and saying, here's a bad deck. Okay. But you got to build bad decks to build good decks. Yeah. But again, I mean, you're a theory crafter.
Yeah.
When you build a deck, are you utilizing the same part of your brain as you are when you're piloting a deck?
No, I don't think so, because now you have to find out, either creative ways, or now you already have a baseline of a deck and trying to figure out how to make it better. So even the deck creation part is using just two different sides of, I want to make it creative, this base idea.
Yes.
What can I do? And now we're playing it. It's like, oh, well, now I need to fix these problems with it. So now I need to take it and start evolving it.
And the way that I build a lot of decks is I have like an idea around a couple different cards. I'm like, okay, here's the idea I have. How can I best build ways that synergistically just really abuse this interaction? Okay. And that's normally how I like to build decks. When it comes to playing, I enjoy playing mid-range combo style oriented decks. Like that's just my play style. And those are the kind of decks I typically like to build around. But if you're trying to build something competitive, okay, now I'm thinking about this completely differently. Is there a metagame? Okay, what is strong in the meta right now? What cards and synergies and play styles effectively counteract these strategies? Okay, there's so many different ways you can do it. Okay, and so that's why I say when you're talking about TCG, a trading card game, you're building a deck. That's one type of player, and piloting a deck, that's a completely different type of player. But I think to be a very good player here, you got to be both. Like you do have to be both, because you have to effectively pilot many different decks, and then from a competitive side, recognize what deck is going to give me the best chance at winning this specific tournament.
And aside from that, if you're playing a lot, the meta slowly changes over time. It can be like every single week.
And they're incremental changes. They're very incremental.
Slight changes. Maybe adding a card because, well, now this other deck, you're really expecting to see more of it at the tournament. So now you just, rather than playing in the sideboard, well, maybe you tech one into the main board. Or maybe tech two into the main board because you're really calling for this one deck to be played a lot. And then, then you see the top 8 list or the number 1 deck list. And it's like, wait, why is this guy playing? This is a sideboard card. True, but not true.
But
when
there's a
50% of the decks at the tournament are this.
Right. So, and again, Sam, I think he's very much a deck builder. He loves building decks, and I think this article kind of really showcases that. In all honesty, okay. Which again, it's not a bad thing. It's really not. He's pointing out why he prefers these different mechanics, right, with his experience. Okay. All right. So this next paragraph, he says, this is the biggest advantage, talking about playing a land essentially being a free action, not having to think about it, right? Which I understand. Like I agree. Okay. So continues with, not so much that playing lands is easy, but that playing a card face down as a land is hard. I mean, it's harder. I would agree it's harder. Yes. Maybe hard isn't the right word for it. Maybe the better term is burdensome. I like that. Before you play any card as a resource, you need to consider all your cards and how you expect that game to play out before you can choose which card you're least likely to need. Often you'll have heuristics like playing your most expensive card as a land on the first turn, but that won't always be right. And what if your most expensive card is a card your strategy revolves around? Or what if it's a rare card you believe is better than all your other cards? He makes a very good point
100%.
Here. Very, very good point. And I want to add on to this too, because I think when picking up any deck in Magic, it's a whole lot easier to pick up any deck in Magic and start piloting it and testing it than it is in other games where you have to utilize cards in your hand as resources. Why? Because in Magic, just like he said, playing land is super easy. I don't have to think. I have no idea what this deck does, but I know here are the lands and those are the resources. I can figure everything else out on the fly. But if I'm utilizing everything in my hand, essentially everything in my hand is a resource, I don't know, again, if this is a deck that I've just picked up and I don't know what the strategy is, I could be resourcing all of my most important cards and not know about it. And that's where it's like, okay, before I play this deck, I need to know a little bit about it. I'll have to go through if I don't have anyone there explaining to me what the deck is, I have to go through, okay, what are all these cards? Okay, I think I've picked up on the strategy here, and then go from there. Do you agree? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's super easy. I've talked in the past about why I didn't like playing Dragon Ball Super. of you can use every single card as a resource, but in my mind, I'm like, this is difficult. All of these cards are good. I want them. I don't know which one to put down as a resource.
It is.
And it was rough for me. So I stopped playing the game.
It is.
And it makes sense.
But right there, I just stopped playing the game. How you're going to I feel like you're going to run into that, man. Like if you don't have some, I mean, when we played Alpha Class the other day, okay, I built you a deck, but you hadn't seen it before you sat down. Like you hadn't seen it. So what was your experience like picking up that, because you picked it up and started playing within 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Right. So what were some of the choices that were going through your head, because you didn't really know what was going on there?
Yeah,
right?
I wasn't. I had no idea. Didn't even like really go through and start reading all the cards, but when we did the set review, I kind of just knew what they were.
Yeah, sure.
So for me, I had a little bit of history with the cards. But playing through it, I didn't know exactly what card to be putting down.
Yeah.
I didn't know the exact cards Dan was playing. So I'm like, all right, well, I know I'm playing a little bit of a control deck.
Right.
So kind of let me be focused on drawing cards and dealing damage to cards.
And see, in all honesty, I didn't even think about that when I gave you the deck. I was just like, here's red, white. It's like a control. Let's go. I didn't even think about it.
Yeah,
but that's honestly.
But luckily for me, I have history with control stuff. So I kind of knew.
Right. But again, I think that's a good lesson for anybody to take away.
Yeah.
Like picking up and just playing a Magic deck. It's still not the easiest, but it's a lot easier when you have, okay, here are my, I don't have to think about the resources. It's just boom, put down your resources. I'm good to go.
Yeah.
With everything else, you really have to get a history. You got to know what your deck is supposed to do before you can effectively pilot it. And so that's where strengths and drawbacks come from a deck builder and piloter standpoint. Again, I love building decks. I like to build all of my stuff. Even if there's a deck that I know is popular, what I tend to do is, okay, you're telling me, let's look at Lorcana, okay? Ruby Amethyst Control is a very popular deck.
Beautiful.
Okay, very popular deck. Okay. I don't want to just take anyone's deck. I want to build it myself. Okay. Sure. I'm going to look at all what's out there. Okay. I'll look at everything that's out there, but then I'm going to start putting together what I think is going to be an effective strategy based off of, I'm going to build my own shell essentially. Okay. And then go from there. Okay. There's plenty of people who just give me the deck and then I'll go from there. And that's a starting point. Like 100%. That's an easy starting point. That's just typically not how I like to start a deck.
Yeah. I like going both routes with it.
Sure.
I'll just be let me look at the list. Let me just get it, blah, 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 throw it together. But then also creating the deck is just extremely fun.
It's so satisfying. It really is.
Because also how I see it is like, all right, if you net deck, right, you're pretty much taking all.
Oh wait, are we talking about net decking, Jim?
No, well, I mean, kind of. Like if you just find a list and you're piloting, or someone just gives you the deck, right?
Yeah, right.
So
which net decking is not bad, guys. It's not bad.
Yeah, it's kind of just like you're taking what the other person has already gone through, like pretty much like reading a book of history of all of this stuff that's already happened and put out there for you, and going into the future from, all right, well, now I can take this deck and evolve it from this point.
Right.
And I don't have to worry about all the previous iterations of it, and just keep it moving forward.
Right. All right, so let's continue here. So Sam continues, says, fundamentally, playing a card as a resource is sacrificing an option, and that generally doesn't feel good. This specifically is why I think this mechanic is a red flag. I don't know if I'd go that far, in all honesty, personally. To me, it suggests that the designers don't understand that designing a game is about crafting an experience and that they need to focus on the emotions of players, and it suggests that instead they believe they're creating a puzzle and prioritize strategic nuance over the emotional experience. It's easy for someone... I want to finish this. I want to finish this paragraph first. Sorry. No, I know. It's easy for someone who's prioritizing strategic depth to believe a game is just better if all of your cards are spells and you have to place them as resource because the players get more agency and they're rewarded for sculpting their game plan and anticipating their needs. What do you think there, Jim? What do you think? What do you think?
It's Dan. You know what also doesn't feel good?
What?
When you just get so mana screwed or flooded, and you go from not having to worry about what card it is you're playing as a resource to I just lost the game because I can't play the game.
Well, hang on. I want to read this next sentence, okay? This next sentence says the problem is that this overlooks the cost of this as an experience. So far, and again, I don't want to jump the gun here, okay? But so far, it seems like we're focusing on the feels bad of, oh man, I don't get to play this card. I just have to put it face down as a resource. To me, there's so much more other drawbacks than just that. Oh man, I have to make a hard choice of what to put down as a resource. Yeah. Like that. In all honesty, that's something I can get over it.
Yeah,
and I have gotten over it many times.
Yeah,
but if we're saying, okay, it's just
this is honestly to me the funniest paragraph in the whole.
I mean,
post so far.
Does he think that the designers of Lorcana and other games that utilize systems such as Lorcana that don't understand the emotions of their players? Like,
oh man,
that's something. I'm like, I don't think I can get there.
Yeah,
I do not think I can get there because look. I specifically talked to multiple designers, and we've touched on this exact topic.
Yeah.
And yes, I can tell you, yes, at least from the ones that I've talked to, yes, they do think about the emotions of their players. It's just they have evaluated it. They have evaluated those experiences and those emotions in a completely different way than Sam is suggesting in this specific paragraph.
Yeah, and honestly, I think it's simple. If it's a problem for you to, in the middle of a game, to be deciding which cards to be utilizing as a resource, rather than just like, oh, I have this land to put down, you're a bad player. You're a bad player who can't adapt. You shouldn't be playing the game, and you call yourself a pro. You're not right. You're wrong.
Shots fired. But in all honesty, like,
I love complexity, but please don't make me do a difficult decision.
Again, he makes very good points here in this article, but there's so many times I'm just like,
yeah, I think this post is a red flag.
Yeah, I'm just, and again, look, the response on Twitter is like LSV, Brian Kibler. There have been people who've been in the industry for a long time who very much agree with the standpoint. Which again,
I mean, there's stuff in here I agree. But
I'm not gonna say like they're all wrong, right? Because again, like they're in all honesty, these guys are all industry giants. Like they've been here for a long time. But again, I think we're at a time in the TCG landscape where, I mean, look, we've specifically talked about how we think Lorcana is, for all intents and purposes, a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think every TCG needs the complexity that Magic the Gathering offers or provides.
No. Especially when they've stated it from the beginning that this will not be as complicated as Magic.
Right. So I don't think games that utilize different resource systems, for me, it's not an inherent red flag. Like, again, I can, for like all of these points, I can understand. Like, I can understand to an extent. It's just like this paragraph right here. I'm just like,
this one is messing with me.
I'm just like, dude, I don't think I agree. I don't think I agree. And that's fine. And that's okay. Right. Okay. So he continues here in this paragraph, in this point. Okay. Says, when playing a resource is a hard decision, it will require time to think about. For your opponent, that's just a loading screen, a time where nothing's happened, so they don't have anything to do or think about. They're just waiting for you to weigh your hidden options. When both players are doing this, a large portion of the mental effort in the game is going into solitary, planning about how you expect the game to go. How you expect the game to go significantly before anything happens. This makes the game feel less interactive than a game where your mental energy is going into directly reacting to your opponent's plays. Okay, I can understand that. Like I don't think there's anything wrong there. Okay. Yep. Also, all this energy is going into giving something up, which isn't typically fun because you still feel like you have less than you did before. And nothing exciting happened. There wasn't any new discovery. The bottom line for me here is that games can only ask for so much mental energy, and that this is fundamentally the wrong place to ask it because it's so insular. This kind of problem solving is much better suited to a puzzle than an interactive game. What do you think about all that stuff there, Jim? What do you think?
Well, I mean, he's definitely correct with the loading screen. There's time happening where, because it's happened in our games where I'm like, when I'm playing Alpha Clash, I don't think it's happened too much in Lorcana. But then again, I haven't used a constructed deck at all.
But again, and I think all of this also goes to how familiar are you with your deck and your strategy.
Yeah. Especially in like...
So I don't think that's inherent to any one game. I think that's just inherent to every game where you're playing a deck where you're not familiar with it.
If you're not familiar with it, or if the meta's like brand new, you don't even know what deck you're versing, then that's also a problem.
True.
Right? But if you know exactly the deck you're versing, then you're kind of just like, okay, I know I'm not really going to be utilizing these cards. I don't have to worry about this until later stages of the game.
Right.
And then at that point, I mean, I'm playing 4 of it. I should see it at some point down the line. And it's like, yes, it's a problem. And some of the stuff is true.
I don't think there's anything that he said here that I don't agree with. Like, I think he's pretty much right. Okay. And so... I understand, agree. I think he nails it on the head here for the most part. Okay.
The emotional experience from the last paragraph.
Yeah.
It hurts my emotional experience reading that paragraph.
All right. His last point, okay, which I don't know about this, okay? Land. All right. So the point is lands increase the variance of your draws, which makes draws more exciting. Jim, let me ask you a question here, okay? How excited have you ever been that you've drawn a land on the last couple turns of a game?
Honestly, Dan, there's no better feeling. When you're like, oh, I know I need my answer. I got 3 left into the deck. I'm in the bottom 50%. It's got to be there. Nope. No, it's not.
So we just talked about a roller coaster of emotions, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, drawing lands
at
those
emotional experience that I hope to never see.
Like, to me, it's like, well, if we can just cut out that bottom of that roller coaster, like, wouldn't that be a good thing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's so when I read that sentence, that's where my mind initially goes. Okay. Yeah. So let's dive into this point here. Okay. Drawing cards is one of the most fun parts of TCGs. You never know if you're going to draw the card you need, and discovering which card you draw and thinking through the new options it presents is exciting.
The new options when you draw into a land. Continue, because playing lands are easy. You have so many options. You just play it. Mental burden gone.
In Magic, sometimes the card you draw is essentially blank because it's a land that you don't have a use for, which can be disappointing. But I think the wider range of possible outcomes makes draws a little more exciting as a whole. I don't know if I agree with I don't know if I agree with that.
Cut, we're done.
I can understand how you arrive at that conclusion. I can understand how you arrive there. I just don't think I agree.
Yeah. No.
On balance, this is admittedly a very small advantage, as there will always be some cards that don't matter at whatever stage of the game you're at and others you want to draw. But when considering trade-offs of increasing variance, I think it's worth acknowledging that increasing variance does make draws a little more fun. Jim, I'm going to ask you, does increasing variance makes drawing cards more fun, a little more fun?
Guys, you don't want variance if you're playing competitively.
That's where I'm like,
you want as much consistency as possible.
That's where I'm like, wait, look, I love playing card games. Okay. I don't like the randomness and variance, but why do you play Commander then, Dan? I don't know. Just because I have friends who like to play Commander, all right? Don't give me a hard time, all right?
We play Commander socially, okay?
It's like drinking socially. Look, I don't drink, but I just drink socially,
I'm
okay?
not there to play Magic. I'm not there to play Commander. I'm there to hang out with the boys and mess around.
There we go.
All right? I play Talran, but it's not to... I had a conversation with the guy at Nova's wedding the other day.
For real?
We were talking about Commander. I'm like, I play Talran. He's like, he instantly hated me. Okay. And I'm like, hold on a second.
Understandable.
Hold on a second. Okay. And I'm telling him like the experience our play group has. It's like, yeah, they hate me, but I'm like, if they're gonna tell me it's like, hey, this is gonna be real fun, I'm like, okay, let's do it. Or it's like
you can get Jim on your side,
or it's
really
like
easy.
You hate me until you need me to stop the person going off, and then you're gonna be happy I'm there.
True. I will. Right? I can speak from experience, guys. 100%
like,
true.
I'm not there to win. I'm there to get second place because honestly, it's more fun for me to have other people enjoying the game. So.
Yeah, agree. All right, well, let's continue here because he's got some good points here. Okay. All right. He says this increased variance also makes it more likely that the weaker player wins, which is important. Outside of a tournament where there are external incentives for winning, I think almost everyone will have more fun overall if the outcome of a game is less of a foregone conclusion. Playing chess against someone you know is significantly better or worse than you isn't very fun because the same person always wins. If you regularly play games with the same people, you want there to be enough variance that anyone playing can win any particular game. The closer in skill you are, the less variance is needed to accomplish that. But in general, more variance is safer to make sure the outcome won't be a foregone conclusion. Card players often complain about variance, but historically, all the games that don't have enough variance where the better player wins too often haven't been successful. Interesting.
Wow.
Interesting points. I kind of agree with him. Because I'm going to be much less apt to sit down and play a game against somebody who I know is better and it's just an auto lose, right? So from that standpoint, I can understand.
I guess I'm more so just trying to think of like what are the other games that don't have enough variance?
Well, I mean, over the years, are you talking about in TCGs or just like?
That's as like a whole, I guess.
I mean, chess is a big one. I mean, I think chess is probably going to be your most famous example, probably. Other games, poker. Well, no, there's a ton of variance in poker. Unless, well, hang on, but like again, like you talk to good. I'm terrible at poker.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, but the thing is, like
it's play the man. Like I watch Suits. Okay, you play the man, not the cards.
Yeah, like you play the man. So it's like, yeah, you can outplay them or like lie to their face.
Right.
About it's like essentially what it is you have.
Right.
But if someone all-ins you pre-flop and it's just like, is that not a variance right there? You don't know what they got.
True.
You know what you got. You don't know what's out on board.
I don't know. I don't know if poker's a good example.
Like,
I don't know if poker's a good example.
That's huge. That's
because
huge variance.
I think poker is a very successful one that has a ton of variance, right?
Because there's so many times a weaker player can win.
100%. 100% for sure.
Chess is kind of like, all right, yeah, the stronger player.
No, right. The stronger player normally wins.
Unless it's like, between, if we're talking ELO system,
right,
roughly like 500 point difference, or depending on how high it is.
But I mean, like if there's a game that you're pretty good at, and like, oh hey honey, you want to come down and play this game with me? No, you're just gonna beat me. I'm gonna lose.
Yeah,
they're not gonna play with you if they know they're gonna lose.
Like fighting games, I understand. Like if we're going based off video games, there's not a lot of variance. It's just like
the better skilled player
more skilled than you in this situation, so we're just gonna win. So video games make sense to me. Card games, I mean,
but again,
I think there's other reasons that they just fade off.
Again, but also we're talking about like a 20-year history, 20 to 30 years of card games, because there have been a lot that have come and go. Right? I couldn't tell you the reason that some games have come and gone. Right? Like not having enough variance could very well be one of the reasons that they did end up falling off. But I don't have that data in front of me to.
And it's also like I will then also think about sports. It's kind of like, well, if you're an overall stronger team, you're going to beat the weaker teams like 9 out of 10 times.
Depends on what game you're talking about, though. I mean, like, and I think that's what makes sports games super intriguing.
Because at that point, the variance is how many players you now have on a team.
But again, think about hockey. Like with those small goals, I mean, it hits the post.
Right. But I mean, hockey's super skill based.
True. But again,
I would argue one of the highest skills based for
sports.
But
it's not a foregone conclusion.
Yeah,
those games that's why they play. Those finals are never foregone conclusions. And I mean, let's be honest. The more exciting games are usually the one when the weaker team wins. Like normally,
yes.
Right?
Yeah, that's usually.
From that standpoint, I think he's got a point. Like I very much think he's got a point there. Okay. So all right, let's continue. He's got a few more paragraphs left. Okay. It says, my inspiration for writing this, that I recently attended Gen Con, where, of course, I demoed a game that uses face-down cards from your hand as a resource. There were other things I liked about the game, but that was too much of a red flag for me to want to get involved. Having been in the industry for so long, and having seen so many new games come and go since the mid-90s, I feel like a lot of the same mistakes keep getting repeated. So I wanted to talk about why one of the most common is so problematic. Notably, the game I demoed was not Lorcana, but Lorcana also uses this mechanic. Lorcana has the advantage that only certain cards can be played as resources, which is a significant improvement. It simplifies the decision about which card to play as a resource, and means that cards can be designed such that the cards you never want to feel like you have to play as a resource just can't be, and adds some of the advantages of lands and deck building in considering how your deck is constructed. I think this simple change does a lot to reduce my concerns, but I still see the mechanic as a whole as a strike against the game. So that is how he finishes up the article. Jim, I want to get, what's your overall takes from that article? What do you think?
Overall, I mean, he's not wrong.
Right. Yeah. I think
on a lot of this stuff.
I think you're right. Yeah.
I mean, there's something I agree with in every single one of his points.
Yep.
Some things I'm just like, all right, really?
Yeah.
But overall, I mean, yeah, it's really well written. Makes a lot of sense as well. It is a really good post.
Do you think a lot of these points just come from playing Magic for so many years?
I can see it.
Because again, like I think someone who's new to the industry and new to TCGs as a whole, I think they're at a significant advantage because they see games that have been around, Magic, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Pokemon. And then they see newcomers onto the block, more notably Lorcana, Star Wars Unlimited, and Alpha Clash, right?
Yeah.
And they get to see all of these games, and then if they're very smart, they'll play everything, and then just have their own opinion. Say, okay, well, here's what I like here, and here, and they just don't have that bias.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not saying Sam has that bias, but I think he kind of does. I think anyone who's played Magic for more than 20 years has some sort of bias.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're going to get away from that. And again, that's not a bad thing. Like, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Okay. I think that's a very good thing because that means they are very knowledgeable on Magic and the strengths and weaknesses that the game and the game system inherently have.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, when we talked to Todd last week, that's somebody who's been playing Magic for a long time.
Yeah.
And he's still super intrigued and interested in Lorcana. Okay. And the fact that Lorcana is able to, is literally bringing Magic people over and not necessarily dropping Magic, but like more like supplementing it. I've said this before, and I think the word supplement is a very good word to use for Magic players, because they're not dropping it, but they're supplementing their experience.
Some people have no problem eating the exact same meal every single day for 20 years.
True.
Yeah,
I
get it.
Do you have a problem with that?
No.
No, you're good with that. You could do that.
I mean, I'll eat a cheeseburger every single day, Dan.
I had my yearly checkup today at the doctor, and they were asking about food, and they were like, "Do you have a problem like overindulging?" I'm like, "Nah, I mean maybe sometimes."
Yes.
Like maybe sometimes I overindulge, but normally I just eat what my wife cooks, and like it's pretty simple to just eat what's on the table in front of me than going out to McDonald's every day and overindulge, because I would do that, and that would be a problem for me.
Yeah.
So so overall I really like the article. Again, I think for me there's everything here. There's a lot of stuff that I agree with, and there's a few stuff that I disagree with as well. I think the biggest thing, again, I really think he just approaches the entire concept from a deck builder's perspective, and it seems to be he likes building decks and wants those interesting choices to be had in the deck building process. And then when you're not given those choices, I get it. When it comes time to play, you feel bad putting down a card you'd rather play. I get that. I can understand that. But for me, I think there's too many negatives of getting land screwed, getting mana screwed, getting flooded. Those emotional experiences are much more detrimental to me than, crap, which card do I got to play face down as a resource? Like, yeah, those are hard decisions sometimes. I get that, but give me that over, dude, I literally can't do anything.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, it's difficult because I've been everywhere.
Because you're also the type of person who are like, man, I don't want to think about this.
Yeah.
That's also you.
Yeah, 100%. Like, there's some games where I'm just like, I don't want to think about it, just like throw it out there, right? But I've played every single different part of like this. I've played Magic. I've played Yu-Gi-Oh! That doesn't pretty much utilizes no resources as a system. I've played games where every single card in there could be used as a resource, and I wasn't the biggest fan of the game, but somehow, like in the middle of right where Lorcana is at, most of the cards can be used as a resource.
Right.
Some of them can not, can't be used, and it is fun figuring out. All right, well, now let's figure out this ratio of exactly how many I'm going to utilize in which cards.
Right.
So I like having no resources. I like having resources.
Yeah.
But I don't like having too many possibilities as resources, which, some of the card games, kind of steer me away from.
Right. And this is where I think digital card games have an inherent advantage.
I was also going to bring up digital card games.
Because again, like I've been playing a lot of DC Dual Force. Dude, I love that game, man. That game is, for me, it's so much fun. I hope it just continues to grow and get better. I'm wanting to do more content around that game. But like when that game, when I'm building my deck, I don't have to think about resources. But you are offered resources because there's there's 4 tiers.
Yeah.
Free, bronze, silver, and gold. That's how much your cards cost.
Yeah.
And then every turn you have 2 resources, and then every turn one of your 2 resources gets upgraded. Like it's a very unique system. Like the top end is 1 gold and 1 silver. You start with 1 bronze. So turn 1, 1 bronze, turn 2, 2 bronze, turn 3, a silver, a bronze, turn 4, 2 silver, and then a gold and a silver.
Yeah.
There's one card in the game called 10th Metal. It's silver, but it says generate a gold. So on the top end, you can only play 1 gold card a turn.
Yeah.
But if you run 10th metal, you can play 2 gold cards, and that's a huge tempo swing.
Oh yeah,
a huge tempo swing. And so, like, as a card game player, I think you need to play everything.
Yeah.
Like, just play the whole game, because you got games like Hearthstone, Legends of Runeterra. Those are 2 similar systems, but also very unique and different. Because Legends of Runeterra, you get up to like 3 left over into your spell mana.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many systems, and guys, like, there's still so much more that we haven't seen yet too.
So
it's
I got
crazy.
a funny story.
Yeah.
So my sister started getting back into Magic.
Okay.
And her friends were like, "Oh yeah, you can play on Arena." Blah blah blah. I know she doesn't listen to the podcast because otherwise she would know about Arena at this point. So she was telling me, and she's like, "Oh, but it wasn't working on my computer." I'm like,
She get Moto.
She has a Mac. And she didn't know that. I'm like, Jay, Macs aren't known for gaming, and they're known for not being able to play games. And so she's like, I didn't know that. And then her friends,
she can run
like,
Windows on it.
then her friends were like, oh, well, if you can't do that one, try Hearthstone. And so she goes to download it, and as she like clicks the icon, it just keeps like buffering or loading whatever the little movement is.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't opening. And so she's not able to do any of the Blizzard stuff as well. And I'm like, I'm not surprised. Like, Jane, you're running a Mac, dude. And so she downloaded it on her phone, and she was playing it. She got through the tutorial. Yeah, Hearthstone. Okay. And which I need to tell her Arena's also on the phone.
Yep.
And so she was playing through the tutorial. She's like, "Oh, I beat the tutorial." She's like, "I died to the guy twice, but I beat the tutorial." I'm like, "Great, dude.
Way to go, Jamie.
I'm so
Keep
glad
it up.
You started your journey.
We're proud of you."
And soon you'll be getting a different type of laptop, I'm sure.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, so with that, we're going to kick it over to you guys. What do you guys think? Do you guys agree with Sam? Do you disagree? What do you think of those 4 points? Do you think he nailed each and every one on the head? Or do you think he's just way off, man? What do you guys think? Let us know. If you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment down below. Let us know what you think. If you're listening, shoot us an email. Leave a comment on the podcast as well. Interested to know what you guys think. Very interested to know. So with that, we're going to move on to our favorite segment called...
What's our favorite segment?
Card of the Week. Card of the Week. We got to come up with a jingle.
Card of the Week. Card of the Week.
What was
Card
that?
Of the week.
What was that jingle again? Was it what was it called from?
It's weird. Was
yeah, that's what Jake did. It's weird. Thanks, Jake. We're gonna go with that. So, all right, this week's card of the week is another Disney Lorcana card. Man, we've just been going off with the Lorcana cards, haven't we? This week we're talking about probably one of the best control cards in set 1. Ooh. And that's Elsa, Spirit of Winter. So Elsa, Spirit of Winter is a legendary card. She is an uninkable 8 cost, 4/6/3. So 4 strength, 6 willpower, 3 lore. She's Elsa, Spirit of Winter. She's a Floodborn hero, queen, sorcerer. So she's got 4 classifications. She has Shift 6, so you can pay 8 or you can pay 6 to play her on top of another Elsa card.
Yep.
And she has the ability Deep Freeze. When you play this character, exert up to 2 chosen characters they can't ready at the start of their next turn.
Ooh, that's good.
And she also has the flavor text says Ice is stronger than you may think.
It did look like an A at first.
It did, yeah.
It's stranger than you
think.
Yeah.
It could go either way. So, Jim, what do you think of Elsa, Spirit of Winter?
Beautiful card, Dan. I love almost every single Elsa card in the set.
Oh, we won't talk about the one that you don't like because I probably agree with you.
Okay. Anywho, yeah, dude, like this card is amazing. Decent body on it, and then the 3 lore, that's gonna end the game quick.
Yeah. But that's not why you're playing her, though. I don't think.
No,
it's really not.
No,
like
to be able to tap or exert up to 2 of them, to then be able to attack with your stuff, right? And then they still can't quest on the following turn if they're not dead.
That's the thing.
And
like
then you can attack again. There's so much you can do with this.
That's the thing. Like you don't even have to attack into them this turn. Like it's a huge tempo swing.
Huge tempo swing.
Like it's crazy, dude. It's insane.
It provides a lot of versatility.
It's defensive. It's offensive. She's offensive with that 3 lore, right?
Yeah.
But defensive, it's just like there's so much here that is just it's a control player's dream card.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. The only variance she doesn't get is to put her as a resource. But honestly, I wouldn't want to
do that. I wouldn't want to do that.
If I'm rocking 4 cards of her, I want to play every single copy.
Correct. I do.
Every single copy.
Multiple times if I could.
Oh yeah.
For real. So I was looking at Facebook the other day because there's a deck currently. It's a Ruby Amethyst control list. Okay. I'll probably do a deck tech on it at some point. But once I build it out, I want to look and see what all the different versions are out there. There was one of the versions that I wanted to run was the version with the pocket watch.
Yeah.
It gives you can pay 3 and exert it. I think pay 3 or 1, I can't remember. But you can pay a certain number of resources, exert the watch, and then give one of your things rush.
It's 3 cost. You can tap and pay 1.
Pay 1. Okay, thank you. So like I was thinking about running that in the deck as well, but there were people who were saying if you're running Elsa Spirit of Winter at your top end, maybe you should consider running Ursula on your top end instead. And I'm thinking, why would I want to run Ursula instead of Elsa? So Ursula, correct. Ursula's a 7-drop, so uninkable 7 cost, also an amethyst, 2, 8, 3, so 2 strength, 8 willpower, 3 lore. Yeah. She's Ursula, power hungry. She's a sorcerer, storyborn villain, and then has the ability, it's too easy. When you play this character, each opponent loses a lore. You may draw a card for each 1 lore lost this way.
So ETB most likely draw a card.
But again, I still don't think Ursula's better because you can think of Elsa in a similar way. Okay. Yeah. And what I mean by that is Ursula says when you play her, each opponent loses a lore. Well, if you think about Elsa in that way, Elsa could very easily read your opponent just can't gain 6 lore next turn.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think Elsa is just a much larger tempo swing because that's how we're looking at Ursula. Yeah, sure. In one-on-one, draw 1 card. One-on-one, draw 1 card, so she'll replace herself in your hand, right? And then also, okay, just lose a lore. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's just not good enough. It's not good enough on your top end.
Stop them from potentially winning the game next turn. I mean, sure, if they're 1 lore off, it's like, yeah, all right, yeah, sure, they didn't win the game. But if we're at the point of turn 8, even further beyond, that 1 lore isn't really going to matter.
Correct. I agree.
And the draw 1 card after just playing it for 7 cost, you're not going to have a lot more resources to just be playing whatever it is that you draw into.
Right.
Potentially.
Yeah. So if you're running Amethyst Ruby Control, I mean, are you running Ursula or you're running Elsa? And I think you run Elsa.
Yeah.
I mean, do you run both? I don't know if you run both. I
would see it.
It depends on your deck. It depends on what you're wanting to do with your deck.
Because they both can end games, especially if you evolve the Elsa shift the Elsa. Turn 6, turn 7, play an Ursula. Turn 8, play another Elsa. You can have some really crazy turns,
right? And
then just tap for 3, tap for 6, tap for 9, game's over.
Right.
So yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, depends on what you're wanting to with the deck. I just don't know that Ursula fits in Ruby Amethyst Control.
Yeah, would I rather play for the 7-drop Ursula or Dr. Facilier?
I would rather play Facilier probably.
Get me back my cards.
And again, just my play style. I mean, dude, there's so many decks that I just want to play Facilier. Yeah. I want to do Dr. Facilier something. Dr. Facilier and something. Like, Dr. Facilier Agent Provocateur is probably one of my favorite cards from the set, in all honesty.
Yeah, he's amazing.
He has so much potential. So much potential. Plus, with his other 2 smaller versions, it's just so much potential.
You know, it might be better than drawing a card. Swinging in, getting your Elsa killed to then be able to play her again.
Oh my goodness. Seriously, dude. Yeah, for real. Crazy. Yeah. So anyway, Elsa Spirit of Winter, this week's card of the week. Beautiful. Phenomenal card. I remember months ago when we were talking about the only legendary we knew was Gantu, and we were like, what do these legendaries even mean? They're not even good cards. And now we have all of them. It turns out that was a lie. And I'm happy that was a lie. Yeah. I'm very, very happy that it was a lie. So anyway, also Spirit of Winter, this week's card of the week. And Jim's favorite card from the set. Would you agree? What do you think?
Yeah, she's up there.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
She's up there. Definitely the most gorgeous card in the entire set.
Most gorgeous enchanted version. I mean,
as well.
What are you calling them, Jim? What is it called?
Oh, these are secret rares.
Secret rares.
Rainbow rares.
You hear that, Ryan? You hear that, Ryan?
Man, that's right. He's not watching this.
That's right. We're gonna clip this. I'm gonna send it right to him and say, Steve, make sure you send this to Ryan.
They're enchanted. So like, we're gonna edit that out.
So, all right. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out with us today. I've been looking forward to diving into this article for a while, and finally glad that we've been able to sit down and go through that article. But yeah, anyway, Elsa Spirit of Winter, this week's card of the week. I don't even remember what card of the week number we're on, 60-something, I think.
172.
So yeah, it's just up there. So anyway, before we get out of here, Jim, where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram at Jim Morgan, HNH.
You guys can find me on Twitter at _DJ Campbell, Instagram, Daniel.J.Campbell. If you head over to our website, www.hobbiesandhappiness.com, you can find links to all of our social content there. YouTube.com/hobbiesandhappiness. We're on Twitter at hobbiesandhappy. But yeah, if you head over to our website, you can find links to pretty much everything there. Excited to get back into content. I was talking to Jim. We've been doing podcasts now for a couple weeks since we've been back. But I've this is going to go live in September, but I kind of took August off from creating content, and my brain kind of needed that. I needed that break. But I'll tell you, dude, it's good to get back. I'm rip-roaring ready to go. Oh, also, this podcast goes live my first week of my new job.
Oh, awesome.
So I'm starting a new job. When this goes live, I would have already started. So I'm excited. New chapter in my life. And I'm excited. And I'm excited to get back to creating content and playing card games, dude. A lot of fun. So thanks everybody for hanging out with us this week. And we will catch you in the next episode. See you, everybody.
Take care.